Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Okay. We now have a quorum. It is 6:32 or thereabouts, and I'm calling the meeting of the Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union to order. As per our practice, we will do introductions and then we'll continue, and then adjustments, etc. Before we begin, I do want to say that this meeting is being held somewhat with a caution sign on it. It is my view that we have a strong obligation to make certain the public is aware of our meetings. And that includes the ability to have this information posted at town halls, make sure that this information is on our website, and the website's been down for a bit. And it's been rather hard for casual members to figure out how to get on. And at least in one recent meeting, the instructions for getting on were not corrected until the last minute. And I don't want that to be an issue here. So we are going to conduct this meeting in the assumption that we are public, that we are appropriate. However, I anticipate asking this board to confirm our decisions at our next meeting after the website is properly put up, after access by the public to the meeting is guaranteed and everybody has access to what we're doing in advance of the meeting. Being able to see it on Fact TV afterwards is insufficient. So with that stated, let's start with introductions and let's start with our honorary remote member, who would perhaps he'd like to introduce himself and the district he's from. And he apparently wants not to do that because he's on mute again. So we're going to make fun of him in the district.
Okay, here we go. Christopher Kibbe, I represent Rockingham, and I'm the treasurer of the supervisory union.
He is. From my furthest right, why don't we start? And I believe that's you, Cheryl.
Cheryl Charles, chair of the Westminster Board, member of the SU.
And going around the table.
Brenda Farkas, member of the Bellows Falls Union High School, representing Rockingham.
Hardy Merrill, WNESU, Grafton, Athens.
Jim McAuliffe, Rockingham School Board.
Jack, I'm from Grafton and am chair of the this board and of the WNESU board.
Priscilla Lambert, I'm clerk of this board and I'm representing Rockingham where I'm chair.
Jim Vazina, Finance.
Team BOC, Westminster Board.
Ricky Adams, Technology.
Molly Bannock, Bellows Falls Union High School, representing Westminster.
I believe she should have her own table. I understand.
There's no chairs and I'm more comfortable not being so hot.
Come to the wrong place. All right, adjustments to the agenda. And the only one that I'm aware of has to do with approval of our of some software. Is that correct? And what would be the way to describe that?
Accounting software.
Accounting software, don't see it. Members should have been updated on that. Let's make that a
Jack, but we need the status report from the state before we look at that anyway. So maybe
We'll
it should
bring
be
that-
wait till the next meeting.
Why don't we do this? Why don't you describe your concern once we bring the item up, and that may be the general view of the board, and that's fine. But I would, yes.
We've discussed it previously, so I suggested be 8B under old unfinished business.
Then let's do it as 8B under old unfinished business. That sounds great. All right, and again, we are aware that our superintendent's 6A report is going to be at least a little delayed because he's off doing something better than being in this building. So with that, are there any other adds to the agenda? Hearing none, let's move on to communication and public comment. Ricky, do we have anybody on the horn?
No.
Wireless water container. All right, very good. Then let's move on to review and approve minutes for June 29th. I will seek a motion to
Sure, I
that
move that
effect.
we approve the minutes of.
All right,
I
any,
seconded.
we got that. Any, I always have to remember we have more than 10 members, at least theoretically, so we are obliged to do that. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
You don't need a motion, Jack, you just need to approve them according to Robert's rules.
Let's approve the minutes, shall we? All in favor, let's roll from Mr. Kibbe on out. Mr. Kibbe,
Yay.
Brenda,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Jakes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes,
Well, everybody,
Can I
I am
also
supposed to
note-
ask the names of people, but sure.
right. Jack, can I also note, though, that we will need to have May 4th and May 18th? Since they were not on our agendas to review them and people wouldn't have had that, I didn't do them as an adjustment to the agenda, but they will need to be done in the future.
We will bear that in mind. Okay, moving on, reports. And our superintendent is in transit or is not quite here yet. So let's start with 6B, finance update.
Okay, well, I want to kind of give you a finance update, but also I'd like to implore your help and assistance. Pass this around.
Thank you.
These warrants, because that is an issue. Is there a way to post this online so that Mr. Gibby can see what we're talking about here?
I'm sorry. I don't have it. I don't have the electronic version.
I'll make it electronic
Yeah.
shortly,
If you can.
Okay,
but I would get underway.
while we're discussing this, I'd really like that to happen for his benefit.
Yep.
For FACT's benefit, for Susan Smallhue's benefit, and whoever else might be.
And Chris, I will send this electronically to you tomorrow, just for you to have.
All right,
Sorry,
this is not an action item, this is simply a report.
Right,
at this
right.
point. Okay,
So I just wanted to give you, this book was a little bit hard to segregate because you have expenses, you have federal projects, and you have revenues mixed up all in one ball. Now, that's not something that you normally would ever do, but in unraveling it and taking the general fund items, which you have in front of you, I came up with a figure, and again, this is from the budget that was passed, of $10,097,385. Now that's just the expense side.
and that's for this SU as opposed to individual districts.
That is
Just the SU.
for the SU.
Yeah, I'm just con.
Yes,
Ending what period?
You're talking about
that's last year,
Last year,
Yes.
okay.
22.
Yep.
So,
And it would include everything.
and this is where I struggle. I try to include everything. Now, I will say this, I mean, I don't have the trust in e-finance that you board members have.
I don't know that you should say that.
But
Big stand-up,
But
isn't it?
I just don't, because, I try to be as diligent and as, fine tuning this stuff as I go forward as possible. And right now, based on all the information that I can view, we have expended for the SU $9,612, $12,503. Now, that's a difference of $485,000. Now, is that a good figure? Well, listen, let's think back. Beginning of last year, I think you had a lot of open spots that you weren't paying for. I think, there were a number of situations in which you weren't spending money.
We had a lot of staff.
Yes, yes, you did. So I think it may be okay. It may be a good figure, but I'm not 100%.
It's not far from what I have in my little spreadsheet.
Yeah,
So,
well,
Can we
one
also
question.
make it clear to the people out there, the ones listening, that this is not the budget they voted on in March?
this is
This
last
is
year.
this last year's expenses that we're talking about.
It's also,
that have
it's also,
taken place.
these are expenses that are spread among the four constituent boards,
yes,
according to the formula.
correct.
But this is kind of like having your largest biller tell you what they're doing in terms of the individual district.
Does, Jim, does this, do these numbers include the contract settlements that have been, well, the teachers
Retroactively.
have been approved, the support staff is on the agenda tonight, but
Right, I think the teachers piece, for last year is
Yeah.
settled and in there.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because the new teacher contract is also in 2024.
Right.
Now, the paras are not, obviously, but the teacher settlement is.
okay.
So,
So the recent Paris settlement, obviously,
It's
is
not
not
in there.
approved.
Yeah.
As,
correct.
okay. Yeah, by the way, we should do this in an early fashion rather than just peppering with questions before he starts. So go ahead.
Money was set
Just
aside
what
for
did I
that.
just say
Jack.
about letting him finish?
I know, I'm
Thank you.
just saying.
Well, let's let the man finish.
So, and as I've been reminded, so this is unaudited. So if you said, look, we're thankful we've got a positive balance, but I would caution you and say, look, until it's audited, until it's finalized, we're pretty sure you're not in a deficit situation. So think of it in that regards. As we go forward, though, I think in the 2024 budget, that's on the far right side, it gives you some indicators of where you're heading. And by September, we'll have this up and running and have every database filling this in. So the next page is your object sheet. And again, if you want to do a comparative from last year to this next year, 23 that we're in, you can do that easily. I will say this, with the budget, that last year's budget, because the 20-digit code gave many people a hard time, and it was a lot to unravel. There is one item, and it says transfers and other expenditures, and it's 3/4 of the way down, and it's under 5912. And you'll see
551 for those.
it's 365,000. Now, as I mentioned to you before, I am not going to do journal entries, 1,500 journal entries to push this all back. We're going to go forward and be as accurate as we can. So,
Where is that?
That's line 51. And
Yes.
Jim, you might just explain to people what an object summary is, because like I said,
Sure.
I want to make sure.
So, and again, we are fine tuning our budget now so we can use it, understand it, work with it. Now, in the past, I think people have said, look, whatever you want to do, what number do you want? Do you want a different number? We're not doing that. These numbers that are here, the function numbers, are the functions that the district will be using. And you'll get familiar with them. And I think more importantly, the staff will start to get familiar with them. The object numbers, which are on the second page, give you a comparative. If you're looking at total salaries, how does it compare last year to this year? And it's just another way of comparing 3 years. And that's what you'll have to look at, because as you know, I mean, costs sometimes build up, but at least you can start to look and compare where you're headed. So with the budgeting, it's important to know that you have a budgeting program now. This is not your accounting software, but if Priscilla was doing negotiating and she says, look, tell me how much it's going to cost for the support staff if we give them 3.2% increase. And this budget program will say, hey, this is how much salary, FICA, worker comp, this is your total cost. So it gives you some parameters of where the money is going to increase and how much you want it to increase. So as you're going forward, there's a lot of data which this allows you to show. And again, eventually, we'll have something that will show in comparative data, the general fund teachers and how that compares against your teaching staff at each school, just as a data point. So that budget program is something that for finance, it gives you that gauge. If we start to drift off, we can easily pick it up.
That's the key.
And that's the key, because you've got to address it, accept it, and acknowledge it, or change it.
And
So,
sorry.
No.
And are these accurate, all of these numbers? Because it seems strange that there's $0 in actual coaches' expenditures and their salaries.
yes. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And the reason why, I see eventually you'll start to see, well, why is that? Why is that 0?
Right.
This is just the SU budget.
Okay.
And if you looked at the high school budget, you'd start to see.
I saw a 0 in high school.
Right.
That would be strange. Okay.
Yes, but you may see it at the middle school, which again was a decision that was made at some time.
Okay.
So, good question, though. Thank you. So as we build the budget, we'll go through this and you'll have it, you'll start to get used to this layout. And we'll modify it as you want to. If you say, hey, look, I like something a little different here. I don't like the print. We'll change it. Now, your expense budget has to match dollar for dollar on your revenue budget, which is the third page. Now, holy cow. This was challenging for me to get a hold of. And this was not easy, but anyways, this is how it's typically laid out. So on your expense side, your revenue budget side, you'll see that for last year, and again, this is estimated. Please, there are some things in here that are going to increase. I don't have those. These are the ones that I know. So we've brought in revenue, 10,736,991, which isn't bad. But you'll notice it's higher than the expense side. Now, again, this has no connection with the grants or federal funds. Separated, nothing. This is just the general fund monies. So if I take that 10,736,000 and subtract your expenses, it's indicating that there may be additional funds available.
Yeah.
So it's just a good indicator of where we are. And again, this is something that I will provide the auditors when they come in. So, you know, and eventually how this will lay out is your assessment piece certainly will integrate early in here to make sure that we're zeroed. Because I don't want to charge any more in assessment than I need as far as the expense goes. So does that make sense?
Otherwise you get a lot of rebates and it just adds more overhead to the whole process.
Yeah.
This is a point where we can round robin and have
Yeah,
people ask
sure.
questions. Chris, I'm going to ask you first, and then I'm going to ask people go around the horn here. Any questions?
No, not at this time.
All right, Cheryl?
I think, first of all, thank you, Jim. You know, of course, as you dive into and deal with all of this on a continuing basis, and you're making progress, so we all acknowledge and appreciate that.
Yep.
I want to make it clear to the public that the fiscal year 24 proposed revenue hasn't been considered by the boards. This is simply to give us kind of a working number to get a sense of what things might be.
Thank you,
That would be
Cheryl.
the,
Absolutely. This is early on. You know, we're really developing the databases, the employee databases that are linking into this. And I think, you know, I'm probably 95% good, but I'm not there yet. So
that's just one comment. Thank
Yes.
you. And then you're saying that what you're handing to us here is based on a budgeting program, not accounting software. And I wondered how this document has been developed and how that compares with the new system that you're proposing that we adopt later this evening.
okay, so the accounting software, the financial accounting software is really separate. And
Mhm.
the budgeting that we develop here will eventually go in and download into the software that is purchased.
The larger accounting software.
Yes.
Okay.
But the accounting software, and we're talking, you know, and if I take $23 million of general fund monies with $20 million of federal monies, you know, that's what we're dealing with of accounting for. And the biggest thing is, for me anyways, is you have to be able to reconcile a bank account. If we're in the final stages, if we are paying people, and our biggest payroll is obviously at the end of the year, when we push money out.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be $1.5 million that we're funneling out for paychecks. Now, if I don't have a picture of what the account looks like, you know, the cash account, how can I send that out?
Yeah.
Wow. But that's where we're at. So the new software allows you to reconcile what you're paying against cash that you have. And again, all of it encumbers money, which means we're reserving the money that's in the budget against an expense that we have made a purchase order out for. So it does all of that and allows you to follow, you know, what you need for money, because eventually school districts are, you know, we only really adhere to the bottom line. We can't expend more than the warrant article that was voted on. So, but we can transfer funds. If we have a project, roof leak, we needed to fix it. And we spent $100,000, we can move money into the buildings and grounds project money. And because,
To tag it accordingly and you.
yes, because, you know, that's just what we try to do, is fill in the gaps where we have them. So, but I will say this, in regard to systems, the state of Vermont is going to make a decision, final decision in January, whether they want to continue with e-finance, which again, I wish it worked, but it just has a number of problems. And one of the main problems that I see, if we hire somebody, who's going to train them? Because there's nobody available at either the agency of ed or with Power School.
Right.
So that's odd. Have software and yet, you know, you can't. And it's not a question of me throwing out $10,000 and saying, come on in, I need your help. No, nobody's there.
I appreciate that. I want to finish walking around the table here. Brenda?
No.
Pardon.
Do you have one of these for all the districts? Like WNESU too, as well as?
Yes, I mean, I haven't
I
haven't finalized them all, but close.
You're close.
Yes.
Have you done anything with shortening the chart of accounts? Have you done
Oh,
any?
you better believe it.
That's what I thought.
You better believe
done a
it.
lot. I've worked on that.
And I will say this, we've got to be able to walk before we run.
I agree.
And the chart of accounts was just just, no. So yes, we're going to reduce it greatly.
That's what I thought.
One thing I just want to,
First of all, I want to make sure you're done, because I don't want.
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay.
I think I know the Rockingham board the other night, by the way, Jim, thank you for what you're doing. We talked about the contract settlement, and of course, one of the questions that came up was, well, what did it cost us? And I'm glad that you mentioned that with this new software package, what you're doing is you tell them, you know, what the rate of increase is, and bingo, you're going to get an answer.
Yes.
Whether it's Rockingham,
Yes.
you know, WDNU,
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
Whatever, I'm hurt.
So you're, this is what we should have, we need to have, and we don't have.
Yes.
But we go on. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a quick question, because Cheryl asked and I'll re-ask it, and that is these reports you've generated, by the way, first time it looks like something that I would recognize as a function-based report, and this goes back almost 20 years that I've been asking for this, so thank you. Is this a home? Is this homegrown? Where are we getting this from?
This is this comes out of Microsoft Excel.
I knew it.
And
Okay.
this is 34 years of work.
I was gonna say this looks like home cooking to me.
This is your work.
And
Yes.
yeah.
But this is something,
Yes.
I will say this. This is functional. This is something that as I transition away, this is something that can be continued and used, and I just think you're going to enjoy the benefits of this.
Well, it looked like homegrown, but it looked like good homegrown, and it's the sort of thing that was confusing people going back at least three business managers that have asked to have just this kind of report, because it's impossible for there to be planning absent it.
Right.
It's impossible to understand trend, to do any sort of trends analysis by function without it. And quite candidly, no normal business uses the raw software that we have, even in its new form.
Right.
Because one, we have multiple districts, we have an SU, we have a very funky antique system. And we need to be able to have boards dive in to understand it. And most people here haven't spent 10 years learning the hard way how school finance coding works. So just thank you. It's almost with relief that I see this. So, yeah. Moving on. So
Yeah, I do have concerns about moving ahead with software right at this moment when we know the state is making decisions. And I know you're saying not until January, but I know at our training for the board chairs in May that was discussed as one of the things that was coming up, and I'd hate for us to do one thing and then they go in a different direction. Anyway, my big question on this is you are talking about the proposed budget for next year. And having that for us in September. When will the auditors start on the information from last year, and when will they get finished? Because I know it's been an ongoing thing that we've wanted them to get started to get at no later than the beginning of August. And I'm wondering where we're at.
The preliminary audit is going to happen on August 1st.
Okay.
So, and again, I will say this, time-wise, we're shooting for September 30th to be finalized. And again, I will say this, it all depends on what you tie together for them to look at, and you have to be ready for them to come in. And I think last year, there was
Took too long.
too long. So, yeah.
So this sounds much better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
all right, Jean.
Just, were you in Hartford more or less?
I was.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted you to know this is a little typo.
So you got the Hartford stuff on it, does it?
Hey, sorry.
That's okay.
I thought I caught them all.
No, I think this is helpful though.
But
Thank you.
listen, thank you very much, though. If you see any misspellings or any
References to what your junction. would be, yeah.
please do let me know.
Okay.
And I think you're gonna be my proofer.
Yeah, I'm a good person.
All right.
All
Get the
right,
draft copy.
Okay,
all
good.
right. And Molly, just for you, good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
All right, very good. Any other questions about any other aspects of this? So we can let, Jim's going to be coming back to us in a little bit, but I just want to thank you for this. It's a major step in the right direction, and I assume that my finance pros will agree with me on that.
Yeah, can I ask one other question?
You go for it.
The same auditors we've had or different?
Oh, good question.
I'm gonna give you my view of the auditors.
Yeah.
Now, when I have to go to a doctor and if he's doing neurosurgery, I don't go for the cheapest.
No.
And as far as I'm concerned, your auditor should be the same way. I mean, this is your financial health. And I don't want second best. I want somebody who's going to be there for me. While I'm in the operation, I want somebody who knows what they're doing. This Ron Smith, I hope you never shift from him, and I hope you're able to hang on to him. I really think he's a benefit. He's doing 95% of the school districts in Vermont, and he does Maine. So
you're comfortable, because there was a lot of concern about some of the mess being actually generated by them rather than resolved by them.
I just want to say, I don't think it's true. I mean, I think he stepped into a mess. I think there was a lot of frustration because he asked for product and he wasn't getting it.
Okay.
And I will say this, and in all fairness, I have asked for a different manager than what you had last year. And I use Samantha Ruggles, who
I know that name.
she is extremely good at what she does. And as I say, I don't want a second stringer.
You don't want to switch auditors. When you do, you're starting from a base of 0 and you're moving forward from 0. You don't have any history that they'll accept. They'll start right off analyzing everything going back to that point in time.
That's right.
He wants the auditors that he is recommending, this board
Good for
should
me.
take them.
Good for me. There was a lot of stuff was thrown around, and some of it was thrown around by me, candidly. So I want to make sure that we're all comfortable with this.
Yeah, I will say this. I mean, I've never experienced the findings which you encountered in the last year's audit. And I mean, that's unacceptable to both of us.
Yeah.
And I hope to get those eliminated, but it takes time. Maybe we'll reduce half the findings this year.
I assume we're going to still have some because we're still cleaning
Yes.
up the
Yes, we are.
stuff. All right. With no further questions, why don't we, and I'm assuming that's right, why don't we move along to other committee updates if there are any. Finance met during the intervening period. Do they have anything to report to us? Chris?
Yeah, so we discussed transportation and a little bit about the new special ed law. Long story short, the consensus from the management was that we are not going to need to buy a new bus this year. It isn't in the budget, but it had been kind of thrown up there as something that might possibly be needed, and management now believes we're okay for this year. There's plenty of considerations about transportation going forward and things to be figured out. I will say I participated in the last 2 days for interviews for the new transportation supervisor, and we were unanimous in our choice. So I'm hopeful that there'll be a new person on board very soon. And I think the good news for that is now Andy will have, I believe, a full staff at the SU, which will be nice for him. And the next meeting of the Finance Committee is on August 17th. We changed the time a little bit to 3 o'clock. And we're going to talk about buildings and grounds and the SU building in particular, because that's where we're at. And also with Jim putting together a budget calendar, starting to develop a budget calendar for the district. That's what I got.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know if Cheryl wants to throw in anything else there, or Jim.
I don't think so.
All right, anybody? All right, cool. Questions? Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I have a question on, so Chris, you said you were going to talk about building and grounds, and when Jack called on me, I was gonna tell him that I needed to have a building and grounds committee meeting because you folks so graciously made me the chair of the committee.
Yeah.
So what entail are you looking for on the 17th? Are you looking at the financing of the building and grounds? Because I do have a couple of questions on the list that I got from Jim that I wasn't gonna bother with him tonight that kind of included that, so.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Molly, because I had actually thought and then forgotten about that. I kind of wondered if it maybe shouldn't be a joint meeting of the two committees, or it would be the two committees need, I think, to function together and not separately. So maybe we should talk about whether we want to have that meeting, as one group, or we can talk about it after the meeting, unless you.
And so I don't disagree with that, and I did actually, because it is I mean, we can have a building and grounds committee, but if we don't know what we're spending and what we got to spend and where we gotta improve. So I do agree with you that it needs to be, at least the first one ought to be a joint. My only problem is that I have a real hard time getting to a meeting before 5:30, 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get on that later on and we'll tentatively, you know, we'll say we're having this meeting next month, but maybe we'll want to reschedule.
Just as a reminder, the way this particular committee is structured, because we have, is that I'm asking all board chairs to remind their buildings and grounds members that they're also part of the SU's Building and Grounds Joint Committee. This is a joint committee, much like our negotiations. And also to make a pitch that one of the items that Buildings and Grounds team have to deal with is what's called a facilities audit. And we need to get that started because when we start talking about ESSER distributions for facility renovation, we need to have a baseline. And since essentially the individual district somewhat compete for that money for allocations, I'm really looking for a unified work product that says this is what the Buildings and Grounds collectively believe is the highest priorities across our system. So that there may be pushback by individual districts, and I'll respect that, but I think we want to get things moving along if we can. I see somebody's hand up, don't know.
Mine's up too.
All right, well, who is shared meeting room person? for-
Jack, that's me. It's Andy Haas. So,
Hey there,
my-
Andy, how are you?
good. I got a real bad connection, so I apologize. It hampered me on Monday too. Just, I can speak to that if you'd like me to, just real quick.
Yeah, do that, and then I'll take a Priscilla's question, and then we'll slide around. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a request into the state for a waiver on an RFP for that facility audit. We're just waiting. We only got one bidder when we put it out to bid, and so now it's kind of stuck in the hopper at the state. So, but I know that Jim DeBell and myself and Jim Vazina have been kind of nudging them to try and get that pushed through. So.
Got it.
And that was exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, very good. And Cheryl?
And I was only going to add also that the ESSER committee has been discussing this topic with input from each of the buildings, each of the districts. So I think all of that information that's been assembled ought to be integrated into this process too.
I'd be disappointed if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Partly because here we are in July, end of July, trying to get this show on the road. And if we weren't using that material, it'd be pretty hard. So yeah. But the point is that ultimately these are board decisions, and I want this to be, I want this to start to move into being a board project. So hence my deputizing Molly and hoping that we can get this coordinated. I look forward to that. Do we have, where are we on, the negotiations has been approved at this, where are we on that?
It's right in the.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there it is, never mind. So do we need to talk about that tonight, or?
That's later on.
That's
the
later,
agenda.
Jack, it's on the agenda later.
Well, I'm not wearing my glasses.
It's
I'm literally
9A,
not seeing.
Jack.
Ratification of support, it's a big blur, my apologies.
No
We
problem.
have policy.
Hmm?
We have
Okay,
the policy
Why don't you-
committee's meeting
yeah.
July 27th at 5:30.
all right, and we'll try to get notices out to people, and
Yeah,
again,
it's been. put
I know,
out,
but it's not on
but
the,
hopefully it's in there.
this whole business of getting our website with these kind of things is important to me, because otherwise it's not really much of a public meeting.
That's why I'm announcing it.
Good for you.
I announced it on Monday night. And I
All right.
Where is it?
Superintendent's
It's at the
report.
supervisor.
Yeah, superintendent.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Andy, we slid around you. Do you want to make your report?
I don't have a lot right at this moment. We've been, but I can just go over a few things. One, on Monday and Tuesday next week, we have Rob Evans from the state coming down to walk all of our buildings. Jim DeBell and I will be meeting with him, with any principals who are around. We're going to be looking at security, and he's going to be basically doing an assessment of our current status, and then giving us a report back on things we could do to improve. We've already shared with him all of our plans, and so he's reviewed them before he comes down. So we're going to use that information to look for any upgrades we need to do. We also have been getting ready. We have a few. It seems to be, it seems to be our maybe our trifecta, but with all the changes in administration, we're getting hit up for another audit review in the fall. So we've been notified of that from the state. And then there's the potential of another one on maintenance of equity around the ESSER grants, just showing that we are not supplanting everything. That the things that are in our budget that we say we're going to do, that we are actually doing them. So there's just a couple of audits. I think it's, when I talk to the state, it seems to be, new superintendent, new business manager, seem to be all those flags that get us tagged. So it's great. It keeps us busy. Our new director of instruction and innovation started July 1st. So she's been jumping, that's Deb Cardane. She's jumped right in with both feet. She had some scheduled vacation, but she's been working off and on. Same thing with Shelley Wilson, our multi-tiered systems of support coordinator. I've met with them a few times. And so we're getting ready. We're all back in the office on Monday. So I think, we'll get a big jump start there. And then, we're still in the process of trying to hire an ELL coordinator. We're still in the process of trying to hire a float nurse. Their schools, some of our schools still have a couple of positions that are open. Westminster still needs a school nurse, which is a key position. Rockingham at the middle school, they're still in need of an 8th grade math teacher, and also a librarian media specialist, and then Grafton still has a couple of positions open. So we're still working hard to fill those positions. And then speaking of Grafton, when I get back next week, and Laura Hazard, the principal of Saxons River, she's been out on vacation also, so she's coming back. We're going to sit down. We have an issue with the closure of the bridge between Bellows Falls and Saxons River, and what that impact is going to be on bus routes, and are we going to have to look at some adjustments? We're not 100% sure yet, so we need to kind of really evaluate it. How is that going to affect the kids coming from Grafton, and then how is that going to affect busing with Saxons River, because we have some kids that are from the village of Bellows Falls that attend Saxons River, and we have students that are in Saxons River that may attend Central. So we have to take a look at that, because we don't want kids on a bus really long. But then also just how's it, that's going to be the first work of that transportation coordinator, figuring that out. So. But that's all I have right now, Jack.
Okay. By the way, I just realized, because as I said, I'm not wearing my contacts and clearly can't read what I'm looking at. There's a we have 9A and B. I actually thought that the B was something else entirely, which was a discussion about student assignments and talking about interdistrict cooperation on student assignments. And
I've got that as 9C, Jack.
Okay, thank you.
That's point
It
of
wasn't,
order.
it wasn't on this one, so, yeah.
That's not an appropriate discussion.
Well,
for-
you, the
Can we
chair,
finish?
no,
That's not
actually,
an
the chair is
appropriate
going to make the decision about
discussion
that.
because the statute
I
requires
know
that
what
it
the
be done at
statute
local
requires.
districts.
I know what the statute requires. This is not, nothing gets mandated at this level. But if we're going to have cooperation between the districts,
I'd like to ask the board to vote on that
I
because
think
it's
that
wasting our
you
time.
know what, it's already part of the agenda. If you wish
It's
to
not
have,
on here.
if you wish to have
It's
it.
not on here, Jack.
Point of order, it's not on the agenda yet.
That's right.
Okay,
It's not on.
then we will, then I had asked it to be on the agenda and was surprised, realized that it wasn't. And, because I'd sent a note to Nicole specifically on that. When we get to the item, we can have a vote of the board as to whether or not they wish to discuss this.
It is on my agenda.
Yes, and it is on, it was on the electronic version.
Printed it today.
Well, let's cover
But
this.
let's move on.
Let's move on right for now, because this is, it's not, when the time comes, you can make your point of order and we'll carry on from there. Let's move on to the item that is before us, which is 7A, which is Title I Teacher Compass School. Who has this item? Does no one have this item?
Can we?
No, that's me, Jack. So,
Okay.
As part of our Title I grant funds, we have to provide funds to independent schools in our area. So Compass being one of those independent schools, Kern-Hatton is the other. And so when we partner with them and discuss how they would like to use their funds, Compass wants to have a title teacher at their school. They had one last year. That person resigned, and so Sandra Stromberg is the person that they would like to have. But that person is an employee of WNESU, not an employee of them. So that's why we're bringing them to the board just for approval.
All right. I always ask about having resumes or having some material. I didn't see anything. Was one sent around?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Jack,
and that's on me. Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
I would like to bring this item into executive session with the other items that are going to be in exec, please.
This is the only item that I anticipate having on executive session, but we can, but if
Well,
you'd
we've
like
got a
to.
leave request and we've got a ratification of a contract. So those are both going to be executive session.
Then we will put that on to executive session and we'll hold this until we have that. I'd like, when we can have you add that as an item, as an executive session item, but as you can see on this, it wasn't listed as one. A lot of times we approve these without going into executive session.
It shouldn't be. You shouldn't list executive things as executive session.
We will, then would you like to propose to this, you're proposing we go into executive session, would you like to do that now? Or just wait? until-
I'm fine with going with that with the other items that I presume.
All right.
Except.
Fine. Our next item is superintendent goals. People feel this is also an executive session item. I'm not, it is personnel matter.
Can I speak to this, Jack?
As you sure can.
I think it was my suggestion to put this on the agenda.
Yeah.
And I am not necessarily requesting or thinking of action tonight, but I wanted to kind of introduce this idea that as we have now kind of moved on beyond the, oh my God, let's keep the ship going forward stage, we as a board, part of our function is going to be to, and the executive committee of the boards will be to evaluate the superintendent. And it's important to have some things in place that you can use as part of that evaluation. And one of the things that I had when I was superintendent that I thought was very useful was a lengthy document of goals that I was working on for the supervisory union. And you probably recall that, which I periodically updated 2 or 3 times a year. And it's not a whole evaluation piece because that's a bit more, but it's a piece of it. Are you accomplishing the goals that you're going forward? And I've talked to Andy about this, so this is not a surprise to him. But I think it would be great if these goals should be Andy's goals, not ours, because he is the one that understands what needs to be done in great detail because he's immersed in it every day. And so, my suggestion would be that we encourage the superintendent to develop these goals in his spare time, and that this is part of how you move a whole district forward, and you get the principals going on the same wavelength as you, and the board members understand what it is we're trying to do here. So that's just my little spiel, and it's a suggestion only, but I think it was something that it was suggested to me by a very prominent superintendent in the state of Vermont and worked well.
As a point of information, we actually went through a fairly lengthy process with Mr. Pratt and Priscilla. You may remember she led part of that process of putting together a rather lengthy enumerated list that wasn't his idea. I do think it's a good idea to have it generated by the super and at least in part, and the executive committee, which owns the bulk of this process. Mr. Haas has his hand up, and I'm going to let him speak if you like.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And Chris, I might not have mentioned this when we talked. What you're talking about is actually part of my contract. So it's embedded in my contract that those goals need to be developed and I think presented by October, and then reviewed at the end of the year kind of thing. So it is part of it. When we wrote the contract, we embedded those in there because I agree with you. I think it's very important to kind of have a guideline of what we're doing.
When the contract was written by my predecessor, who asked me for input, one of the input pieces was to get this as part of that contract. So I knew that there was at least draft language, last I recalled, about it. But I think that it's still a useful thing. I think it's also useful to solicit input from members and from board chairs and they to their boards about issues that they have concerns about, things that they think are priorities, because again, every board has their own challenges. But that's what we've got, and I do think it's the executive committee's way overdue in meeting. Hasn't met in maybe a year, and that'd be a good item to discuss as well. See your hand up, Priscilla, go for it.
Yeah, we should be meeting at least monthly, but Andy, just a question on that, because the contract started when we changed it was back in March, the beginning of March, end of February, sometime in then. And weren't you working on some of those? So would it be that you're supposed to be giving an update here at the beginning of this, or does your contract say at the end of this fiscal year? I'd have to look back.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, there was the new contract actually started July 1st, but I developed goals that we would try and meet at the end of this year, because my understanding from Jessa was they couldn't backdate the contract.
Right.
So I completed last year under the old contract, which was the 1-year contract, and the new contract starts July 1, 2022. But I had sent those goals off to Jack, just, and with me not being there, I would appreciate if we could review those goals maybe in August, that we had put forth. Just
I think in August, I think if members of this board talking to this chair, members of the individual boards talking to theirs, have items that they have of priority interest, certainly send them to either me or to your individual board chairs. And I do anticipate in August also that we will have a meeting of the executive committee, and I'll call it just to make sure that we do. And to make sure that Andy's got plenty of time to prep, so it'll probably be later August to make that fair, because I don't want people to worry during vacation. They got to think about something when they're supposed to be on vacation. So there we are with that.
Will the board get to see these goals?
I think the idea would be that I would hope that you would either send me suggestions or send your chair
Well, it
suggestions.
sounded like Andy's already.
Sandy has a list that Jess and he put together. Is part of the contract. It's public. It's right in there. And if you don't have a copy of
The
that,
goals are in the contract?
the goals were part of the discussion.
no, they were a separate. They were separate, but I can get them for their. Yeah, they're. Yeah, so we could get them up.
I'd like to just get a look.
I think that seems reasonable.
Okay.
So anyway, there we go. Again, public documents should certainly be available to all members of the board, if nobody else, but they're public documents. So there you go. All right. With that stated, thank you, Chris, for bringing it up. Let's move on to the ratification of the
Software.
Finance.
Oh, sorry, the software. Yeah, I didn't write it down. Thank you all. The software item that approval of the software. We're ready to do that.
Sure. Well, I just want to explain. So let's say the board said now, we want to put this into the budget. So we're not going to do it right off. We don't have to. We got the system running. Some of the problem is, and there's not a lot of alternatives. If you said, well, where are you going to go? And Infinite Visions, which is a Tyler product, which again is owned by a company by the name of Munis. Now, Munis is a big company,
Right.
Big software company.
Two municipality programs.
Yes, Keene has a Munis program that they use for their district as well. The software service contract is a $50,000 a year bill. So it's pricey. But so if you decided to wait, our problem is that to get in line, to get this working, it's going to take a while. So if you said tonight, well, listen, let's do it. The soonest that I may be able to get in is January 1st. Hoping. Not guaranteed because it's not in writing, but there's a long lead time just to get in line, to get service and get it set up. So, I mean, that's not given. Now, you say, well, the state, the state went with this magnificent e-finance system 6 years ago, which again, I'm offended at how the state chose the system.
With no spec. Yeah.
No spec. And again, I think they spent money foolishly. It's a system that still is not fully functioning. This is 6 years after going into Vermont. And I think I told you, in every other state, it's working the same. They don't have a lot of this product out there. But one of the flaws, the major flaws that they have is any changes, they can't just do to our software because they have to worry about all of the other states that are running this, which are not many, but there's a few. So you've got as far as I'm concerned, a problem, because quite frankly, if the state said, you will use e-finance, and if the legislative branch, the Senate Ed Committee says, you will use this, I'd say, not me. And I mean that in every way. I mean, why should I get a flawed product that they're supporting and paying for? It's because it's free. So.
Go ahead, why don't we start with,
Okay,
Do you know of other, towns or districts in Vermont that are using this system that you're talking about, the Tyler software?
There's
Burlington, isn't
Infinite Visions
Yeah.
is I think there's probably 80 districts out of the 120 districts
In this state?
in this state.
Okay.
And again, I will say a lot in New Hampshire. And I started using this product early on, and this was, I don't know how many years ago, but a long time ago. And it was called Budget Sense. And as they've developed it, it's changed into this Infinite Visions, which is now changed into something else. Because they have tailored and there's a personnel program, HR program that's attached with this.
That's all
Because HR now is complex. And I think I mentioned this at the past meeting. With the HRA, HSA now and all of the stuff in between, wow, it's overwhelming. And it's almost outstripped a lot of the software programs that are connected and linked in with the software.
Go ahead and then
I'd like to make a motion
yeah, absolutely, like that.
that we approve the signing on with the Tyler, I guess, Tyler software package for our accounting system.
Do we need, just as a point to have him negotiate, or is this a fixed price and we take it and be happy we got it?
Well, I mean, I did try to negotiate. I did try to push them. And they wiggled a little bit on the final pricing that you receive.
Okay,
And
so then that's the number we're gonna work with
Yes.
tonight. All right, I know that we don't have unanimity on this, so
Questions?
Did you second?
yes,
I
I have you seconding on the record, yeah.
We don't need seconds, but question. I mean, I forgot the question. And what you're telling us is that this is 50,000 every year?
no, the 47,000 is the initial purchase of the software.
And
And
there's
then
an
I
annual
think-
licensing that isn't there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's the yearly contract, which is, I think, 20, I forgot
That's
that.
23 or something.
Something like
It's
that.
according to your
Yeah.
document here,
Yeah,
it's $20,571.
there you go.
Yeah. So, and that's every year.
So it's an ongoing price, whereas
Yes.
the
Yeah.
others was not.
The other,
So this
the
is additional
e-finance,
expense every year.
the e-finance is free. The state is picking up 100% of the cost.
But
It
it's
wasn't
all-
really free.
I was gonna say, we.
That's what I was gonna say, like, would you-
We were adding staff, we were adding auditing time.
Well, if you were
That free
to,
software cost us six figures.
well, that's what I'm wondering. If you were to estimate how much the e-finance software costs the district in total, what, do you have a ballpark even around what it would have cost?
Oh, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it cost you over $100,000 to own that product.
Okay.
That's.
Because the other thing is I just looked it up, the Infinite Visions one, and it looks like, I mean, one of the differences, right, is e-finance is designed for industry, like all types of industry, whereas this Infinite Visions is designed specifically for school and
Yes,
district, which is
yes.
gonna make so it'll be.
I want to repeat an observation I made about e-finance years ago, and I'm going to remake it for those who forgot. I'm kind of a computer geek. And Jessa Westcott, also a computer geek. And we dug into this and discovered that it was two pieces of incompatible IBM code that had never been properly connected together. It was not connected together by the owner of this orphan had been sold multiple times.
Yeah.
It never worked anywhere. In the state of Massachusetts, when a version of this was adopted under such sketchy circumstances that indictments followed and people went to jail, and from my view, for a good reason.
Yeah.
I have never understood how that was adopted by the state of Vermont, and I've never understood why the Attorney General is so uncurious about it, because it looked bad, still looks bad. The software is non-repairable. You would literally have to start from scratch. There's code in that stuff that's more than 17 years old. And there's no way that you get written in different programming language. There's no way in the world you put the pieces together and make it function. And that's what you're dealing with. The idea of continuing this an hour past the absolute necessity. My question to you, and I'll get right to you, Chris, I see your hand up. My question to you is, it's important to run these types of programs in parallel, because you do never, because one of the things that made this such a horrible crap show, to use some vernacular, was the fact that we did a cold port.
Yes.
Which meant that you had no way of fixing anything if you had mistakes made. If we convert in the middle of the year, is that actually possible to do? Because you're not making this port over at the beginning of your fiscal year.
Right. We're hoping, and again, we're hoping to build from September 1st to January 1st. So it's fully functioned. People are fully trained and fully knowledgeable of the product they're converting, and flip the switch in January. Because the hardest part, and again, I've always done it in June 30th, July 1st.
Right.
But the hardest part in conversion, I think, is payroll.
Okay.
Because it's a new tax year.
Fair enough. Chris, I see your hand up. I'm sorry for the delay.
No problem. Just a question about Jim's motion. Should there be a not to exceed figure attached to that meeting's motion? I'm in favor of it. But since we are spending money that isn't budgeted.
Not to exceed 50,000.
Probably the numbers right here.
No, yeah,
I think it'll be those numbers.
These numbers right here.
Will you have to pay that annual fee this year?
Yes.
So it should be the fee for the dollar amount plus the annual fee. So
Right.
that's actually
So
more
47,000 plus 20,500.
Yes,
Right,
the
so-
total is
And what about training? That's gonna cost too.
Well, let's just figure out what we're authorizing. So we've got, thank
would
you.
be $68,241.
All right, now, do you anticipate a training overhead cost this
No.
year?
No, the
So-
training is in that
All
$20,000
right.
figure, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I would, if
I'll accept
you accept that
that
as a
number,
friendly amendment for,
Yeah.
what's the number we're working from again?
$68,241.
Does that include all of the time to put in data and all that? I'm sure it
But that
doesn't,
is
'cause
not-
that's what
that
you're-
is not-
That's what you're talking
Oh,
about.
no,
for
no, no, no.
e-finance.
Sorry, no, you're not. This is a
That's what I'm
motion
talking
to
about.
purchase. And I want to be very clear. That's what
But we need to
the
know.
chair is going to make it really good. What this motion is a motion to allow our finance director to purchase product. That's what the motion is. It's not due to other expenses. We can debate that, but that motion
I
before
thought
us
we were in debate.
is,
Jack.
but I'm being very clear as to what the motion is. So that's what it is. Now, if you have another question, feel free to ask it, and then I'm always got her hand up.
I
And
was
so does
asking
Chris.
what the other costs are, because I think for us to make decisions, we need to know the costs, because when it turns around, if the state decides that they are going to go with another system, we need to know what we have expended because we're responsible to taxpayers. So we need to know what we've expended. They need to know what we've expended and what the true costs are to our district. We've been talking about true costs, and I appreciate Jim so much because he's giving us more of the true costs, but I definitely want to know the true costs before I am asked to vote on things.
All right, Molly,
May I call a question, please?
Yes.
I would enjoy that.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
please.
Question has been called, and I'm going to roll call, starting with Mr. Kippy. Are you in
You have to
favor?
vote on call the question because you're cutting off members of a small board.
All right, we will move on, calling the question. Mr. Kibbe, are you in favor of calling the question?
Um,
And we haven't had
yeah.
a
Yes, although I would like to have the motion reread before we actually vote on it.
I think we will do that at the time that we go ahead. We'll do it now, just because.
I believe the motion is to purchase the Tyler software for $68,241,
Amount not to exceed.
not to exceed $68,241.
Okay, so that is a motion before us. You support calling the question to get yeas and nays on this, Chris? All right, then we'll move on. Cheryl. Brenda, sorry, just brain fart today. Yes, Meryl. Yeah, and Jake?
Yes.
Technically, it's improper to call a question on a small board because you're cutting off, that's why on a small board, you cannot call a
Let
question.
me,
You're cutting off discussion from minor individuals, and so you're not supposed to. And what I was going to ask was for a recommendation in support of it from the hearing from the superintendent, and we have not done that, and that's what we should have done,
well, unfortunately,
and that's what Robert's rules say.
unfortunately, this is not a small board. We have 12
It
members.
is, no,
we
12
have
is a
12.
small board.
Let's keep moving around.
Let's keep, I'm going to, your objections have been noted, and I'm taking it that you are voting no on this.
I am voting no because I
Thank
wanted
you.
to hear from the
That is what we
superintendent.
need, and I'm going to move on. Molly?
Yes.
All right, Keen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion to call the question has been passed. Now that that has occurred, we're going to just flip motion the motion, and I'm going to start with Keen. this
I'm
time.
making a motion that we hear from the superintendent before we vote.
The motion is privileged, and we are moving on.
It's not
Thank you very
privileged.
much. It
I want to
actually,
hear from the
are you,
superintendent. Jack.
your
Just give a
objection has
thumbs
been
up,
noted.
Andy.
Andy, do you have, are
Give a
you in
thumbs up
favor
if
of
it's
this?
I just wanted to-
All right, then we, I appreciate your admonitions. Keen, yay or nay?
Yes.
Molly, yay or nay?
Yay.
Priscilla, yay
I
or
made a
nay?
motion.
It's, and it's been ruled out of order by your chair.
But it isn't out of order.
The
Any motion is
chair,
not,
the
Jack.
chair has ruled it out of order. You have voted nay, in my view. I am voting yay.
I vote yay.
Sorry for
Yay.
getting rattled about this.
Brenda.
Yes.
Brenda, thank you. It's a bad day for me. And Cheryl?
Aye.
All right, so the motion
And Chris.
has,
Chris.
and Chris, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I thought Chris started, yay. All right. Thank you all for this. I recognize unanimity on some things is not possible to achieve. We strive for it, but it's not always possible. And I regret that this was contentious, but I'm glad we got it resolved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can we excuse Jim?
he'll
I've
be,
been told he has a long ride home.
I think that he does have a long
I
ride,
hope your car's
and
air conditioned.
I thank you for hanging with us this evening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, before we get into the items that are now clustered together as presumably items that we will discuss, CBA, the leave of absence, and the teacher contract of all, there's been at least discussion, these should be properly done in executive session. Before we do that, as I said, there was an item that was supposed to be in the agenda, and is in some agendas and doesn't seem to be in all agendas. And, but it is a modification to the agenda, as has been noted, and some members would rather not talk about it this evening. So it is coordinating, it is a coordination of student requests to interdistrict transfers, and might be a term of art for this.
Point of order, Jack.
Let me finish, and then your point of order will be noted once I hear it. In order to make, since the agendas, we seem to have contending agendas. We need to clarify which agenda we're working on, the one with this item or the one without. And I would like to we can either discuss it or we can have a roll call. Chris, you've suggested that you object to including this item. So why don't you lead us off with anything you have to say on it?
What is the question, Jack? Is it whether it's on the
Well,
agenda or not?
well, here is the issue, whether or not we can discuss it, whether or not we should coordinate, use this board perhaps as the venue for doing this, to help coordinate the fact that we have nearly a half dozen parents and young people who would like, either because of the bridge or because of other reasons, to go to a school other than the one that they've been assigned. The reason I'm bringing this up is in July, I think it's kind of late to be moving kids around, but I do think that we have pledged in the past to try to coordinate the process of letting parents and students have at least some limited access to schools other than the one that they're assigned to. In other words, if there's a student, block away from the town line in Cambridgeport, or a kid that's going to be hung up because they're on the wrong side of the bridge, but are technically in BF, that really have more sense to go to Westminster, or for whatever reason, that there ought to be some way of putting together a list of who they are and seeing if there's some policy we might create that allowed for coordination between us. And that's really the goal here, was to at least open up a discussion to see what people thought about the idea, without any, we're not going to, we don't have the authority to impose a plan on this. We do have the ability to coordinate between us and see if we can develop a common policy about it.
You're asking my view. My view, Jack, is that when I brought to you some years ago the possibility of creating a single unified district, which would have included elementary choice, you might have given that some consideration. And you didn't. You voted it down. And the statutes are very clear. The policy is clear. And it's chaos to be allowing students to hop back and forth. And not only that, it puts districts in grave danger of lawsuits from all kinds of angles. And so I am vehemently opposed. We have policies that are in place that reflect the statute. And as far as I am concerned, in my limited role on the board of the Rockingham School District, I will always try to not allow students to jump between districts when they don't have the right to. And I wish, Jack, that you had spent some time thinking about this a few years ago, because you and some other people dismissed this out of hand. You didn't even let me explain the advantages before your road signs were made. So
I didn't make any road signs, just like,
yeah, I'm a little bitter about this, Jack, but I'm right, and you know I am. There is nothing in the statutes that allows, yes, a district can allow a student to come in even without tuition, but it is chaos when that happens, and it puts everyone at such legal risk. And not just now, but further down the line. It's not the person who was allowed to come that's going to sue you. It's the person 3 years who's not gets a no, and oh, my kid is special ed, and you're discriminating against my kid. That's the problem. If you want to have elementary choice, Jack, open up a single district discussion again. Maybe this time you guys can have some thought about the advantages of forming a single unified district that would include all 4 of the towns. But
When it comes my time, we'll talk about
in
that.
my capacity, my limited capacity as a single board member on Rockingham, I am going to fight this all the time.
Thank you for your passionate response. I'm going to roll around to,
Point of order that we shouldn't even be discussing it. The statute says clearly it is a local district item.
Priscilla,
It is
this
not an
board-
item for the WNESU
Priscilla,
board.
this board can discuss the presidential election. This board can, if it
It's a waste
wishes,
of our time.
discuss.
We've been here an hour and a half.
Priscilla, this board can discuss the situation in Afghanistan if it wishes to. The question simply was, I've heard Chris's view, very passionate, very heartfelt. I'm asking board members, going around the horn, asking if it is useful. It doesn't sound like at least one person thinks it is, to have a discussion about whether or not we can coordinate. I will say, as a point of information, the alternative governance structure that was the alternative to consolidation specifically spoke to close coordination between the members, routine all board member meetings, and discussion of this item, among others, was in that alternative governance proposal. I was not the lead in this stuff, but I do recall those conversations. I'm going to move on to Cheryl. Do you feel this is an item we'd like to discuss at all tonight, or we can move on?
I don't think we can discuss it very fruitfully tonight. I think there's precedent in this area. I appreciate Chris's remarks about the chaos, and then at the same time, I kind of back up to think about individual circumstances. As a Westminster board member, we've done it kind of case by case, which adds to chaos, which I understand. But I think we ought to do some homework. I think we ought to prepare some position documents and let us kind of think it through together. I don't think we can have a fruitful discussion tonight.
My hope was that we would do exactly that. We'd at least discuss whether or not, where we're at, who does what, whether or not there's a way to do it, and then have the board consider it. And part of my thought was to allow us to start put some prep together, not for this year because it's July,
Right.
but to do prep work for the following year, if it's even fruitful to do that. Brenda, your thoughts?
I agree with Cheryl, and I think it would be something that we'd have to do later, not tonight.
All right.
As a new person to this sort of information, I sort of defer to Chris and his analysis of the situation.
All right. Jakes?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. This is not the place. The WNSU board is not the place to discuss what is the Rockingham board's prerogative and decision, nor the Westminster board, nor the high school board, nor the W.
So your view is there's no
So
advantage
this is
to a discussion?
No, this is not. And obviously I was, I know that Act 46 was terribly flawed. But and I think the other 3 towns are school choice towns. So this is kind of an easy subject. This is, Rockingham, we don't have choice.
But only for middle school. It's not, this is mostly elementary.
Yeah, but we provide K through 12 in Rockingham, and we will look at situations that come before our board, but this board here is not the one to discuss local board.
I'm just want for the record to note a couple things. One, that in my community was opposed to this, and I I respected the 90% vote of my community. The original Act 46 was represented as a fiscal savings for boards. We asked where that savings was, and no one was able to provide it. That was not our past superintendent's fault. It was a statewide problem. The alternative governance model that was proposed asked for extremely close cooperation, and it's between boards. This board has no power over these matters, but it doesn't have power over contracts. It doesn't have power over a whole lot of things, but it is our only coordination body to figure out if we have common policies. And it was in that spirit, see if there was some way to work out common policies, that I brought this up. I am sorry that these issues seem to have engendered bitterness, because that's not the intent. The intent was to say, we've made these decisions. What are all the things we can do to act as a single entity, save the legal taxing authorities that we currently have voted for? And I had hoped that we might have this discussion. I would like to pull individual boards, if they're at a point when they think they're open to having coordination discussions. I think it would be useful, but I'm hearing loud and clear tonight is not that night.
My turn?
Yes.
I think the Rockingham Board is absolutely open to considering the situation for any student that is brought before them, whether it is Westminster, whether it is Wyndham Northeast Union Board,
We'll call
which I
Grafton,
understand, Grafton is easier, where I understand, I know there are at least students that are asking to go to one of our schools, and I understand that. And if those, as I wrote to you last week, if they will come to the board, and come to your board, and we can talk between the two boards and come to see what they want and whether we can accept them or not. That is, to me, the way that you do this at the individual boards, because it is by statute an individual board decision. And I think the board has shown, Rockingham Board has shown that they are open to those discussions on an individual basis. Thank you.
Well, Jack, you're not gonna believe this, but the reason why I have been sitting in these rooms for so long is, I believe, without having a talk with Mr. Kibbe, exactly what he was talking about. We have kind of shot ourselves in the foot a couple of times, as far as I'm concerned. We remodeled a really good school, and probably as towns, we all should have come together like you're talking about doing. And we didn't. And when that was starting to happen, that was when I had this beautiful little kid, and I was trying to figure out what the best thing was for her to be doing in school. And so school choice is something that is a big deal to some people. And so then I got involved in the school board system, and then all of a sudden Westminster had a position where we had like 24 kids in kindergarten. So did that, and we only had one teacher. So that meant we had to hire another teacher, and now we only have 12 and 12. Or we had a couple kids that really close to another town, and their parents went that way, and their parents really kind of thought it'd be more convenient if their kid went to that town, and we got told that that wasn't what Westminster decided to do before I was on the board, which I understood that, but I think that Chris and I could have a very great conversation about this, because it is a deal. It is a big deal. It is something that, as we all talk like we're involved in the community, but our school system is, we got all these little roadblocks all the time. And so I think that this probably isn't the time, but as long as everybody else had their 2 cents, I gave you mine. But I think it's something that is serious, that we aren't sometimes doing what's best for the parents and the kids for what area they're in. But every time we talk about it, we seem to, we worry about who's doing what instead of what's best for the kid and the family. And that happened a long time ago. And that's why I'm sitting here, because I couldn't believe that we were making decisions that we were making. So here I am.
Thank you.
My kid's almost done with college. I'm about done with school.
Okay.
I think just in general, I think that something that frustrated me when I've been watching school board meetings for the past couple of years is like, kind of ideas are thrown out, but we're not taking in the expertise of the people who know this stuff. So like, if someone on the board had an idea, like, I think we should have this unified way for kids to transfer between schools. I think before that's just talked about in a meeting for 45 minutes that doesn't really produce anything, they should, just like sometimes it seems like sometimes the board wants to treat school districts as a business, and sometimes they want to treat it as like a discussion time where we think we know more than the people in schools. And I work in schools, so it's hard for me to like listen sometimes and like go into a school for a couple of weeks. But I think that like, if you want this stuff, come forward with a proposal that is well thought out, that's researched, that has the expertise of the people who know this stuff in mind, so that we don't just sit here and talk about things for 45 minutes. We have like a set plan that we know what it would look like. We know what it would cost. We know what the legalities would be. I think in general, for anything that's such a big decision like that would be a great practice for us to have. I mean, in general.
I will say that in my naivete this evening, I had thought that I might be able to get the board to agree to authorize the chair to start collecting such data so that we have discussion about it and present it to the individual boards. That was the thought. I'm not feeling that we're quite ready to have that discussion, although we just did.
But my question is, do you need to come to the board for permission to do that, or can you just do that and then?
I think it would be high-handed of me to just do it and start dropping stuff on the board or individual boards. I wanted, before we did anything, to find out how open the folks were to even the idea. My sense is that there is some openness, but it is certainly not universally shared in one of our districts. It doesn't feel this is a thing at all.
I think all of us want to do what's best for kids. So I think if people come with proposals that show that this is, whatever the decision is going to be in the best interests of our students and our district, then I don't see that there's an issue that people research things.
That's why we should be here.
What my hope was that people would not object if I started to find out if other multi-district SUs have best practices out there that we might use as a basis for further discussions. That was sort of where I was starting, because I thought it was, I had crying parents on the phone, and I felt their agony and wanted to see if we were ready to have a discussion. And like I said, we kind of said we weren't going to have one, but we had one, and at least it's a start. I'm still not sure if I should be. It's 8:08. I appreciate that, Chase. I just wanted to find out if this was something we wanted to move on. Let's continue on this evening, and we have 3 items before us that all sound like they might be items that should be done in a executive session.
Jack, one comment. Our next meeting for the Rockingham Board is August 1st. And if a parent wants to be considered, that is up to the parent and your school district to contact us. Otherwise, yeah, it's not up to this board.
We've established what the law is currently. That was not in question. But thank you. Let's move on. We have 3 items that I need to have an executive session motion made if we discuss these in executive session. Chris, do you want to lead that, or somebody else want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll do it. Move that the board go into executive discussion to discuss a teacher contract, a staff request for leave, and the ratification of the support staff collective bargaining agreement. Premature knowledge of which by the public might compromise the position of the board or the people involved.
Fine. Chris, before we do that, and we traditionally do those at the end, we often will move director's comments. Before that, would you mind if we did that first, and then let's go into executive session?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So let's, if you have any comments, Chris, go right ahead.
I think I already made my comment, Jack.
Well, you can make more if you'd like.
But I will add a little bit, which is, you know, if you want to, if Grafton wants to send students to Rockingham, then you should be forking over the tuition, because that's how it's done under the law. So that's my comment. You, the board.
Yep, I'm not the board, but I take your point.
You represent the board, yes.
I'm one member only. Cheryl.
I'd like to just pause for a minute and think about, here we are in July, and to think about hoping that families, kids, teachers are getting some rest, and that we can really look forward to an exciting and positive and healthy school year coming up.
And are we, Brenda?
I'm all set.
Ready to move on to the next school year.
All right.
The one request I would make is I missed the last SU meeting
All right.
because I didn't look at my email on the 27th or 28th of June. Apparently on the 26th, the message went out that there was going to be a special meeting of the board. And I learned about it at 9:30 the night of the meeting. And I think if you're going to call a special meeting, or a meeting that's out of the sequence that we have, and you haven't heard from board members, then somebody at the home office needs to say, hey, look, maybe we better make a couple of phone calls here, because I just thought it was unfortunate, and it's really communication, and we need to do good at communication.
Thank you. That's a good point. I have one, and this is uncomfortable for me. There were indications to me made that that a board recently had a case where members were systematically pulled for their opinions on a matter that was to come before their board in a public session, but that these discussions happened in advance of the public meeting. I have no basis to determine the accuracy of that, but I will say that if such things occur, there are a few things that are more blatant violations of open meeting law. Any systematically polling members in advance to attempt to secure majority in advance of public discussion on matters of policy, staffing, student matters, or finance is an unambiguous violation of state law. And if I hear about it, in the future, it will result in an immediate referral to the Secretary of State's office for action. I don't want to hear a whisper about such behavior going forward. I'm not going to talk about boards, and I don't want comment on this because quite candidly, anything people say about this would be part of any evidence on the matter. And I don't think it would be wise for people to talk, if they've been involved in this, to do so without reference to counsel. Now, over the last 15 years, we have allowed members a great deal of leeway to chat offline about matters like agenda setting, which is proper fact gathering, asking about procedural questions, and engaging in general politicking and everyday gossip, because many of our members have known each other for 20 years and some of them went to elementary school together. It's a small community, and philosophically, I'm not a zealot about enforcing the rules on this stuff. But systematically organizing offline discussions and hustling votes on matters prior to meetings crosses a big fat red line. And I don't want this is not to be commented on tonight. I'm just saying to members, if you do it, stop it. If you know people that are doing it, tell them to stop it, because I'm very serious when I say if I hear about it, I'm going to the Secretary of State's office if I have to drive there. That's my comment for this evening. Continuing on. Priscilla.
I agree with Jack that should be careful in any of communications because email makes things a lot simpler. I know I do put information out to my board that of things that are going. Oh, you be quiet, please. It's my director's comment.
All right.
That it is that information that of items that are going to come up, because that's part of putting out our agenda, and that's important. So I would caution that anybody that is sending agendas to the chair, yes, you should be careful in the agendas that are being given. Also, 12 or less is a small board under Robert's rules, and cutting off any member's discussion is not allowed under Robert's rules, because in a small board, you don't want to overstep and not allowed any member to continue. So calling the question is generally not allowed in a small board, just a point of order on that. I asked to hear the recommendation of the superintendent in support of the motion that was given so that we could have it on record, which is important in knowing what his recommendations are. I would assume that he was going to support, but I would have appreciated him being allowed to do that so that we could have that. That said, I do hope this board continues to show kindness and consideration in their approach to all members.
Thank you, Priscilla. Wow.
It's pretty hard to get people to want to be a board member. We are always looking for seats, always looking for people to get involved. We need to try to keep our meetings in order. Our chairs have got the hardest job, but we need to, all of us, not speak over each other, and let's run a meeting. Yes, we are here and I am here because I want to know we're doing the best we can for every kiddo in our community, but we're also part of a business too. This is supposed to be professional, and it's almost embarrassing sometimes. So I just, let's keep this professional and let's keep the clock moving. And, some of us have worked all day, and I'm here to do my job, but it feels like these drag on a little bit.
Thanks.
Just add on to what Molly said, I think not only are we trying to get board members, but we're also, as a school board, we know how we want children to act, and we wouldn't want kids talking over each other or talking over teachers or interrupting or anything like that. So if we want to be models for our community and for the children in our community, we should model the behavior we'd like to see. If this was my classroom, which I am a teacher, I would not have allowed this behavior.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, so with that in mind, let's move into executive session. Actually, do we have to vote on that
Yeah.
yet?
Oh,
Okay,
no.
we did.
No, we
No, didn't. So let's do that. So all in favor of having executive session per Mr. Gibby's list? Let's just quickly, I'm getting nods around the room. Without objection, as they say. That's it for the public section. We will come back out briefly with some votes on a couple of these. So that will be part of the public record, but thank you all. So we are now out of executive session, and we have a couple of motions. I'm expecting one from Cheryl.
On the gratification of the support staff?
No, on the leave of absence request, you're going to make a motion, my understanding is, to deny this, or am I wrong on that?
We have a request in front of us for a leave of absence, and the board does not recommend.
Well, you need to make a motion, and then we need to vote on it in
I
public session.
don't have all that information, so.
I don't have her first name.
Okay, you know what, Chris Kibbe, since you know this individual best of all of us, I'm going to have you make the motion if you don't mind.
I'm not sure that's an accurate statement, Jeff. I move that the WNESU board deny a request for a leave of absence from a paraprofessional.
Thank you for that. Jane Stewart.
I should use the name.
I think that the name is already part of the public record. So we'll do a roll call starting with you, Mr. Kibbe.
I vote yay on that motion.
All right, and Cheryl,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Yes.
Priscilla,
Abstain.
Priscilla abstains,
She's in my district.
Molly,
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Then we have votes in the affirmative with one abstention on that matter. The next item is ratification of the support staff CBA. I'm looking for a motion to approve the ratification of the
I make a
CBA.
motion that we approve the ratification of the support staff CBA.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion, beginning with Mr. Gibby?
Yes.
Cheryl Charles,
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
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 We have unanimity on that matter. The date and time of the next meeting is, unless there's an objection, August 3rd at 2022 at 6:30 p.m. and not to last more than an hour and a half, God willing. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.